If you just bought a new Mavic Air 2, today I want to show you how to set it up and get the best settings so that you can get the best footage and the best experience using and flying your drone possible. Hey, if you don't know me, my name's Sloan and I create content here on YouTube for solo creators on the go. People like me who are out exploring the world, filming, taking photos, and you want to improve your skills, so I do reviews of equipment that makes the process easier and tips and tutorials on how to use that equipment so that you can tell better stories. Now, making all this assuming that you've already activated your drone and you've done any firmware updates. If you haven't done that yet, you need to do that first before you go out and fly your first flight. Now that you've got your drone controllers on, your phone's plugged in, you've got your drone out, pull off the gimbal protection cover. You don't want to fly with that on. You may want to put an ND filter on, you may not, depending on your flying, the conditions you're flying in. And then you want to put your props on. It's very important that you match the white bit here and the white circle on the props to this, and the black props together with the black hubs. If you don't do that, you can end up with real problems. So make sure you match those properly. Next, unfold the drone, folding these two arms out, fold the bottom two arms back, and then you can turn it on by double pressing and holding the second press of the drone. That'll take a few minutes for the drone to get set up and turn on and acquire GPS signal. In the meantime, you should have been able to connect to it with the controller as soon as you turn it on. Sometimes it takes a minute, sometimes it doesn't. There we go, now it's connected. I highly recommend don't take off until you have at least 10 GPS satellites. You can do it without it, but the drone seems to behave a little more erratically when it doesn't have a lot of GPS satellites. So it takes a minute, but let it acquire all the GPS signal it needs to acquire.
The home point has been updated. Please check it on the map.
When you hear that warning, the home point has been updated, check it on the map, that means it's acquired GPS signal. So it knows exactly where it is, and that way you can take off, and if you have to do the smart return home, or if you lose connection, it will return home to this same point automatically. Now, before we take off, we're gonna wanna adjust some of the settings. The first thing you do before you do anything is you wanna go into these three little dots on the upper left right-hand corner, and the first thing that pops up is safety. Max altitude. I set this to the max because I'm flying in mountains all the time, but legally in the US, you're only supposed to fly above, no further than 400 feet above the ground. So you may want to set this to 400 feet if you want to make sure you don't go over that limit. Max distance, you are supposed to keep your drone in line of sight at all times. Now, I set it to max distance because I obey that rule automatically, and I don't want to have the problem of getting a shot and then all of a sudden realizing I hit my distance of, 1,000 feet or 2,000 or 3,000 feet. So I set it to max, but you should do what you feel is right for you. For return to home altitude, this is important. You want to make sure your return to home altitude is higher than anything you're taking off around. So if the trees around you are only 80 feet tall, you could set this at 100 feet. Because if the drone loses connection with the remote controller, it's going to ascend to whatever you set this altitude to, and then fly back to the home point and then come straight down to land where it took off from. Now you can update the home point here. That is when you're moving around. If you've had it tracking you, following you around, you may want to update the home point as you move so that if all of a sudden the battery voltage gets lower and it needs to auto return to home, it doesn't try and fly back where you took off from. These are two very important settings: obstacle detection and advanced pilot assistance system. Obstacle detection activates the front and the rear and the bottom sensors so that the drone can see somewhat is around it. And then the APAS is DJI's automated version of a flight path planning system. So if it sees a tree or an obstacle in front of it, it will choose to go left, right, or over, or maybe under that obstacle if it has enough room. So you want both of those activated so that you have less of a chance of crashing your drone. Also down here, you can calibrate your compass if you need to, and your IMU. I only recommend calibrating those if you need to, and the app will tell you if you need to. The auxiliary LED is the bottom landing light. I leave that on auto, and that works fine for me. And then of course you can unlock the geozone if you're flying in a place where you've gotten permission to fly. And this is an important setting as well. If you go down to advanced safety settings, when the signal is lost, you want to set that to return to home. Otherwise your drone will stay wherever it is or just descend and land wherever it is. There are a few instances where you might want to change that. For example, if you're over water, you probably want to set it to just hover. But if you're over land and relatively safe area, then keep it at return to home. AirSense is only in the US, but if you enable it, the drone will automatically detect most aircraft that are in the area and give you a warning. It's very handy, and it does actually work really quite well. This is where ADS-B comes in really handy. There's a large airplane flying quite a ways above me over there, but if you tap on this, it will show you nearby airports, and also, see if I can find it. Oh, right there is a manned aircraft coming at me. That's the one you can see. Now, he's probably 800 feet higher than I am right now, but still, I'm going to make sure we're safe and get out of the way. Some of the other controls you want to change. Here you can change it from metric to imperial depending on what you want. The gimbal mode I leave on follow me. FPV mode is where it will tilt left and right when you start moving left and right. It doesn't really work for cinematic footage generally. And allowing the upward gimbal rotation is a good thing because it will allow you to go up beyond perfectly level. And so if you're looking up a mountainside or something like that, that works really, really well. Also down here is where you can enable phone charging. If you're working in cold weather, you want phone charging available, or if the battery on your phone isn't very good shape anymore, phone charging really, really helps. Here is where you can customize this function button here. So I have it set so that when I tap it, it will recenter the gimbal, or the gimbal will go down 90 degrees. So if you tap it, it comes up to 0 or down to 90, depending on where the gimbal is at the moment. And then if you double tap it, it will turn on the bottom auxiliary LED. You can set that to be whatever you want, but it's nice to have that little function button to be able to switch between stuff if you want to. So now let's talk about the camera settings. Here you can choose either MP4 or .mov files. I choose MP4 because that's generally what I work with, and it works best with my editor. You can choose whichever one you want. So for the color profile, you can pick normal or D-Cine-like. It's important to note that if you're shooting HDR, you only get normal. So if you want to shoot in D-Cine-like, which is kind of the flat color profile that DJI has, then you want to put that in when you're recording. You want to set your video mode into the normal video mode, not the HDR video mode. And then the coding format, here it's important. H.264 is easier to work with because it contains less information for your computer to have to process through. But if you have a powerful computer, then H.265 generally gives you a slightly better quality footage. It's not a huge difference, and if you're posting stuff on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, you're not going to notice it. But if you want the highest quality available, choose H.265, but if your computer has a little trouble with that, then switch it to H.264. Here you can use your histogram if you want, overexposure warning, which are these little zebra bars that you see on the screen here behind me. And then you can auto sync your HD photos. You can add your grid lines or not. I like the rule of third grid lines, which is this one here. And then you can set white balance to auto or manual. I generally put it in manual because I like to be able to choose where my white balance is and set it for the conditions that I'm in. But auto does a pretty good job overall. And then here also you can format your SD card, cache the video on your phone if you want to, which is handy in case something happens. You can always look back on your video and see where your drone went. Right here we have in the transmission tab, we have smooth or HD. You can also choose dual band, 5.8 or 2.4, and you can choose auto mode or manual mode for channel. I keep it on HD because I like to see the best quality coming back to my phone, and the range with that even is fantastic, and then I leave the channel mode in auto. In the app, you can adjust all the camera settings by tapping on that little film strip above the record button, and you can go between photo mode, video mode. You can't go into the quick shot modes until you've taken off, so we're going to skip that for right now, and the same with hyperlapse. When you go into photo mode, you have single 48 megapixel photos, which are my personal favorite because it gives you a little bit more detail and just makes the image a little bit nicer. So I usually do that. You can do smart photo mode and auto exposure bracketing, where it'll take a timer and do a couple of photos that you can then later piece together, but I usually leave mine in 48 megapixel mode. You can switch to video mode here, and I like to film everything in 4K HDR in 30 frames a second. The reason I do 30 frames a second is then I slow it down later in post, but if you don't plan on doing that, it's not a big deal. I film in 4K, but if your computer has trouble editing 4K, you may want to drop down to 1080p or some other lower resolution, and we're going to get into how to do that in just a second. The reason I like HDR is it does a fantastic job of exposing everything properly, so it takes a lot of the work off of you to make sure you're getting exposure properly for what you want to film. So HDR is a good way to go. It does a good job overall. Here's the thing with the quick shot modes. You can't go into the quick shot modes until the drone is in the air, and you can't change the settings for the quick shot modes until you're in that mode. So we're going to take the drone off, and then we're going to talk through some of the quick shot modes and how to change the settings for that. You can use the auto takeoff mode where you just push the button and it takes off automatically, or you can put your sticks down into the center and then it will start warming up like this, and then you can just push the up stick to actually take off. Here's another thing to be aware of. Your drone starts up in normal mode. That is where it moves the fastest, but also has obstacle avoidance on. If you want to move fast, the fastest the drone can go, without obstacle avoidance, you shift into sport mode, and that's where it will give you the absolute most speed that the drone is capable of. If you want to slow down your movements and get those really smooth cinematic shots, switch into tripod mode. That's where everything's slowed down, and so you can get these really nice movements. Even though you're using a full stick, you can get this really great panning shot and match the gimbal. If you're panning around, say you want to do your own point of interest mode, it's much easier if you have it in tripod mode than trying to do it in a different mode. Now that we've taken off, we can get into the quick shot modes. So push on this little icon there where HDR video is displayed, touch the quick shot modes, and then you have access to droney, rocket, circle, helix, boomerang, and asteroid. And then over here on the left side, you can scroll through and decide how far you want each of these actions to be. So for a droney, do you want it to go out 90 feet, 190 feet? You can set all that right in there. If you want to change the resolution, because it defaults to 1080p, if you want to get higher quality resolution on your quick shot modes, you need to go into quick shot mode like we are now, tap on the 3 buttons up there, go to camera, and now you can change the resolution between 1080p and 4K plus all the other settings of your quick shot modes so that you can get the highest quality quick shots you can get. If you want to start a quick shot, it's actually pretty easy. You go here, select which quick shot you want, hit the plus button, and then hit the green button.
3, 2, 1.
And the drone will start that quick shot action that you've chosen. Now it works the same for all of them, so it's really pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Now if you don't know what the different quick shots are, droney is where the drone pulls straight back and up as it's filming you. Rocket is where the drone will pull straight up from you. Circle is where it will go around you. Helix is it goes around you, but it also goes up in altitude as it goes around you. Boomerang is where it goes around you, but it kind of goes up and back slowly as it gets to the top and then comes back down and around. And asteroid is that one where it pulls out, goes up, takes a bunch of pictures and makes it look like you're standing on a tiny planet. Hyperlapse mode is where it's going to take a bunch of pictures and piece them together into a time lapse that's moving. I don't use this function very often because it's really difficult to do well with drones, but if you want to do it, that's where it is. So you can set it to where it's free and basically you can take pictures anywhere you want to. You can have it circle an object by setting a point of interest. Say I could set myself as the point of interest. You can have it do course lock where it's going to fly in a straight line and then take pictures toward that. And then of course you can also set up waypoints, which is pretty useful if you want to do very specific time lapse, say around a construction site or something like that. And at the end of every quick shot, the drone will return to the position that it started that quick shot in. So what about active track? Active track is now just a part of the system. And so if you go into video, HDR, 4K, 30 frames, basically it's pretty easy. All you really have to do is draw a box around whatever you want to have it track. You can go into trace mode, which is where it's going to follow you and generally try and stay in the same direction the drone has been, wherever it is now. Or you can go into parallel. Parallel is where it's going to try and stay on the side of you and fly alongside. Again, be careful of your surroundings because if there's objects, it might crash. But if you do trace mode and then hit go, the drone will then start actively tracking you wherever it is you go. So it's going to move forward, backward, to the side, but it generally is going to try and stay and follow you around wherever you're going at the same distance that you set it at. So like you can see, it's backing up now. And of course, when you're done active track, you hit stop and it's done. The other thing you can do is active track around an object in a point of interest mode. So again, if you want to do that, you go into point of interest mode. We're going to go the other way and then hit go. And it starts to film you as it moves around. And yeah, again, keep an eye on your surroundings, because if there are trees, it might run into them. Beyond that, getting to know your drone is just a matter of going out and flying. Fly safely, fly smart, but go out and enjoy your drone. Now, when it comes to landing, basically you want to find yourself a good open area that's flat, that doesn't have a lot of obstacles around it, that you can come over, hover over it, and then just pull the stick down until the drone lands and stops completely. Tap or double tap the home button and it will stop any smart modes that it's currently doing. And when you're all done, it's important. And then when you're done, it's important, double tap the button to turn it off again. If your battery is completely depleted, don't put it right on a charger, but let it cool down, because if you feel it, it's actually pretty warm after flying. So let it cool down all the way before you put it on a charger. That'll help extend the life of your batteries. The other thing you want to do, of course, to protect your gimbal before you put it back in a bag or anything like that, is put the gimbal protector back on, which just goes over the top like that and then snaps in. Fold the drone up, fold the propellers in, and you're ready to go to your next location. If you want to learn how to use your drone to its fullest potential and get the best footage out of it, I put together a playlist right here that will really help you learn different ways to move and fly and use your drone so that you can get the most out of it. Click or tap there. I'll see you in one of those videos. And until next time, cheers.